Monsanto was incorporated in 1901 by a chemist by the name of John F. Queeny, who worked for Mayer Brothers Drug Company before incorporating Monsanto. John named the company after his wife, Olga Monsanto Queeny. He was said to be a Knight of Malta, which is a secret society. He's an Irish-American Roman Catholic. A lot of Knights of Maltas were Roman Catholics. This is the same year J.P. Morgan founded U.S. Steel Corporation. Monsanto was originally established as a company that sold sweeteners for foods and beverages. The sweetener was known as Saccharin. 1 pound of Saccharin would do the job of 500 pounds of sugar. This would be a profitable ingredient for companies to use if they don't care about the health of their consumers. You need less to make more. The company Coca-Cola bought Monsanto's entire production run of Saccharin in 1903 and 1905 to use as an ingredient in their products. By 1905, Monsanto Company was also producing caffeine and vanillin. By 1917, Monsanto added more and more products, vanillin, caffeine, and drugs used as sedatives. In the same year, Bayer AG, a pharmaceutical company based out of Germany, the one that invented aspirin, heroin, and oxycodone, was Monsanto's competition. Bayer cut prices in an effort to drive Monsanto out of business, but failed. Soon Monsanto started selling an antiseptic called Phenyl, and later started also selling aspirin when Bayer's German patent expired in 1917. Soon after, Monsanto became the largest manufacturer of it worldwide. 1920s, in its third decade, Monsanto expanded into basic industrial chemicals like sulfuric acid and other chemicals. In 1926, environmental policy was generally governed by local governments. Monsanto Chemical Company founded and incorporated the town of Monsanto, later renamed Sauget, Illinois, to have more control over local policy. 1927, shortly after its initial listing on the New York Stock Exchange, Monsanto moved to acquire 2 chemical companies that specialized in rubber. By 1928, John Queeny's son, Edgar Monsanto Queeny, takes over the Monsanto Company. In 1929, Monsanto began production of polychlorinated biphenyls, PCB for short, in the United States. PCBs were considered an industrial wonder chemical. It was an oil. Today, PCBs are considered one of the gravest chemical threats on the planet. PCBs, widely used as lubricants, hydraulic fluids, cutting oils, waterproof coatings, and liquid sealants, are potent carcinogens and have been implicated in reproductive development and in immune system disorders. The world center of PCB manufacturing was Monsanto's plant Sauget in Illinois, which is the highest rate of fetal death and immature births in the state. 1939, Monsanto purchased Resinix, a subsidiary of corn products and commercial solvents, which specialized in phenolic resins. Thus, before the war, Monsanto's plastics interests included phenyl formaldehyde, thermosetting resins, cellulose, and vinyl plastics. From 1939 to 1945, Monsanto conducts research on uranium for the Manhattan Project in Dayton, Ohio. Dr. Charles Thomas, who later served as Monsanto's chairman of the board, was present at the first test explosion of the atomic bomb. During World War II, Monsanto played a significant role in the Manhattan Project to develop the atom bomb. Monsanto made it into the agriculture business in the 1940s. Edgar was CEO of Monsanto when the company manufactured its first agricultural products, one of which were insecticides such as Santabon and others that were later produced. In the 1950s, the company got involved with animal agriculture when it produced a protein supplement called MHA for animal feeds. About the same time, Monsanto developed a product called Cetoquin, an antioxidant for preserving the nutritional value of feeds and dehydrated forage. By 1955, Monsanto took over Lion Oil Company so that they can use petroleum chemicals as their starting ingredient for many products. One of the products Lion Oil produced was ammonia to manufacture ammonium nitrate fertilizer. These plants also produced a lot of phosphoric acid, which polluted the environment. The Monsanto Luling, Louisiana plant, the first computer-controlled ammonia plant in the world. In the mid-1960s, Monsanto established Monsanto Agricultural Centers, or MACs for short. They were retail operations to provide all the fertilizer and herbicides a farmer might need closer to their farms. They had many herbicides established by this time: Randox, Vegadix, Ramrod, and Loso. Randox killed weeds in corn or soya beans. Vegadix killed grasses that infested beans, beets, corn, and salad crops, and the other two were weed killers. By 1965, the evidence of widespread contamination from polychlorinated biphenyls had related chemicals has been accumulating, and internal Monsanto papers show that Monsanto knew about the PCB dangers from early on. In 1967, Monsanto entered a joint venture through the guise of Bayer AG with IG Farben. IG Farben is the German chemical firm that was the financial core of the Hitler regime and was the main supplier of Zyklon B gas to the German government during the extermination phase of the Holocaust. From 1960s to the 1970s, Agent Orange was by far the most widely used of the so-called rainbow herbicides employed in the herbicidal warfare program as a chemical that removes the leaves from trees during the Vietnam War. Monsanto became 1 out of 10 of the 36 producers of Agent Orange for U.S. military operations in Vietnam. This made Monsanto the key defendant in the lawsuit brought by Vietnam War veterans in the United States who faced an array of debilitating symptoms attributable to Agent Orange exposure. Agent Orange is later linked to various health problems, including cancer. By 1970, cyclamate, the low-calorie artificial sweetener, is pulled off the market in November after some scientists associated with cancer. Questions are also raised about the safety of Saccharin. Here's the corn.
And the Roundup, which is one of the most deadly things ever invented.
By 1973, the company started meddling in a new field called biotechnology, when university scientists were successful at transferring genetic material from one organism to another. By 1976, Monsanto produced CycleSafe, the world's first plastic soft drink bottle. The bottle suspected of posing a cancer risk. It's banned the following year by the Food and Drug Administration. By the 1980s, Monsanto began phasing out the fertilizer business for biotechnology. One of the first products they produced out of biotechnology was Posilac, which is an artificial growth hormone that is already present in cows, which increased milk production up to 15%. Today it's known as bovine growth hormone. In January 1983, Monsanto scientists succeeded for the first time in history to modify a plant cell through biotechnology. Norman Borlaug summed it up by saying, quote, "Their work hurdled the birth of agriculture biotechnology, both as a science and as an industry, and placed the U.S. at the forefront of the new science." End quote. 1 month later, in February of '83, Monsanto scientists again for the first time in history succeeded in growing whole plants from genetically modified cells, which later produced the GMO seeds. By 1987, Monsanto conducted the first field test of genetically engineered crops. Monsanto is one of the companies named in a $100 million settlement for Vietnam veterans exposed to Agent Orange. In the same year, the U.S. Department of Agriculture gave Monsanto permission for field tests of genetically modified tomato plants. The tomato plants were modified to tolerate Roundup, agricultural herbicide, and resist to 2 plant diseases. The tests were successful, and from here on in, research continued in genetically modifying plants. And between 1996 and 1998, Monsanto acquired a number of seed companies so that they can continue their research. These plants are injected with the DNA of the bacterium, which is glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup, and that is why they are resistant to herbicide Roundup. This makes it so the farmers can spray the toxic chemical to kill weeds and it won't affect their crop. Genetically modified organisms, GMO fruits or vegetables are the result of a laboratory process in taking the genes from one species and inserting them into another, splicing and mixing DNA. It is done so the plant can produce its own insecticide or be able to live in conditions such as tolerating large amounts of herbicides such as Roundup. A recent peer-reviewed study published in the Entropy Journal on April 18, 2013, suggests that heavy use of Roundup could lead to health problems such as gastrointestinal disorders, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, depression, autism, infertility, cancer, and Alzheimer's disease. Over 70% of the foods on the Canadian shelves contain GMO foods. The main ones are corn, soy, oil from canola and cottonseed, sugar from sugar beets, and a small amount of zucchini and crookneck squash. Livestock feeds are GMO too, so it's having an effect on the animals we eat. So GMOs are not good for our health. They can cause food allergies. Some plants produce toxins, but the levels are too low to damage humans. Genetically modifying can increase toxicity in plants, and studies have shown that by consuming genetically modified plants, people are risking antibiotic resistance. Rats fed a lifetime diet of Monsanto's genetically modified corn or exposed to its top-selling weed killer Roundup suffered tumors and multiple organ damage, according to a French study. It is said rats fed on a diet containing NK603, a seed variety made tolerant to dosings of Roundup, or given water-contaminated Roundup at levels permitted in the U.S. died earlier than those on standard diet. The animals on the genetically modified diet suffered tumors as well as a severe liver and kidney damage. 50% of the males and 40% of the females died prematurely, compared with only 30% and 20% in control group. Corn is the most popular crop that Monsanto has, and almost everybody eats it. It's hard to find organic corn nowadays. Popular agricultural companies like Clark's and others sell genetically modified corn that can tolerate Monsanto's Roundup, and millions of people are consuming them and they don't even know it. In all, I agree we need to label genetically modified foods because it is vital for us to maintain optimal health and to have a free will choice. But that is a small win. We have to ban genetically modified crops altogether. We should not just settle for labeling them. Take a look at the bold statement Hungary made to Monsanto when they burned the genetically modified fields in 2011. It almost makes you question the motives behind this company. Do the CEOs and higher-ups of the Monsanto company know what they are doing? A company called Cargill is 50-50 joint venture partnership with Monsanto. Monsanto makes seeds and Cargill makes fertilizer. Cargill just so happens to produce the hazardous waste known as hydrofluorosilicic acid, which is the type of fluoride that is used to fluoridate municipal drinking water in the United States and Canada. Is there a conspiracy? The ingestion of fluoride is a whole other topic itself. It is carcinogenic and it builds up in the bones of people that ingest it. Geoengineering involves spraying aluminum, barium, and other heavy metals into the atmosphere under the guise of combating global warming. All around the world, people are finding aluminum accumulation in their soil samples, rain samples, and even air samples. The combination of fluoride and aluminum in the body breaks the blood-brain barrier, allowing neurotoxic chemicals into the brain, which otherwise would not have been there and not be able to break the blood-brain barrier. Monsanto has officially patented genetically modified aluminum-resistant seeds. Could Monsanto be linked to geoengineering projects? Is there a depopulation plan?
GMO.
by Monsanto.
That's God's makes miracle girl.
Yeah, and we're putting that in our vegetables.
So there's so many front companies that are actually under the guise of Monsanto, eh?
Yeah.